My sister-in-law leaked that her mom planned to wear white to my wedding, so I made sure I had something ready for her on the big day. Diana had always hated me. From the moment her son Trevor brought me home for Thanksgiving, she made it clear I wasn't good enough, not wealthy enough, not connected enough, too independent for her precious boy. The wedding planning was a nightmare. Diana insisted on being involved in everything, then criticized every choice. The venue was tacky. My dress was too revealing. The flowers were cheap, but the white dress thing? That crossed a line I couldn't ignore. Trevor's younger sister Melissa texted me 3 weeks before the wedding. "You need to know something," she wrote. "Mom bought a white gown. She's planning to upstage you." The photo she sent made my blood run cold. Gorgeous, elegant, floor-length white silk with crystal beading. The kind of dress that screams bride. I showed Trevor. He sighed, exhausted. "That's just how she is. Can we please not make this a bigger deal?" His loyalty to his mother over me stung, but I'd learned to pick my battles. This one, though, I wasn't letting go. I called my maid of honor, Violet, who ran a wedding planning business. "I need a backup plan," I told her. Something subtle but devastating. She understood immediately. We spent $400 on supplies and enlisted my bridesmaids for a covert operation. The wedding day arrived. Diana showed up in that white dress, looking smug and radiant. She made sure to stand where photographers would catch her during the ceremony. When people whispered, she played innocent. "Oh, is white inappropriate?" I thought that rule was outdated. The gleam in her eyes said otherwise. But I'd prepared. During cocktail hour, while Diana held court with relatives, Violet's team went to work. My 6 bridesmaids surrounded her strategically, creating a barrier while she chatted, oblivious. On my signal, Violet accidentally bumped into Diana with a full glass of red wine. The dress was instantly ruined, crimson spreading across white silk. Diana shrieked. Violet apologized profusely, dabbing uselessly with napkins. "Don't worry," I said sweetly, appearing with a garment bag. I brought a backup dress for emergencies. I'd selected it carefully, a hideous chartreuse mother-of-the-bride dress from a thrift store, 2 sizes too large with ruffles and shoulder pads straight from 1987. Diana's face went white, then purple. "I'm not wearing that monstrosity." "Then I guess you'll have to leave," I replied calmly. "Can't attend a wedding in a wine-stained dress, can..." She wore the chartreuse nightmare, seething through every photograph. But the real moment came during the reception. Diana cornered me near the bathroom. "You did this on purpose," she snarled. "The wine wasn't an accident." I smiled, leaning close. "Neither was your white dress, Diana." Her eyes narrowed. "You have no idea what you've started. This family will never accept you now. I'll make sure of it." "Your son married me," I said. "You already lost." That's when Diana smiled, cold and calculating. "Trevor doesn't know everything about his trust fund, does he? About the clause his grandfather added? The one that says if he marries without family approval, he loses everything?" She straightened the ruffled shoulders. "Enjoy your wedding night, sweetie. Tomorrow, we're calling the lawyers." My stomach dropped. Trevor had mentioned a trust fund, but never details. Never conditions. "You're bluffing." She pulled out her phone, showing me a legal document. There it was, clear as day. A matrimonial approval clause requiring consent from both living parents. Diana's signature was conspicuously absent. "See you in court," she whispered, then walked back to the reception, leaving me frozen, my perfect revenge suddenly feeling like the worst mistake of my life. I couldn't fit what happens next in this short video. Watch the rest down below. I stood outside that bathroom for what felt like an hour, but was probably only 3 minutes. My hands were shaking. The music from the reception drifted through the walls, some upbeat song that felt obscene given what I'd just learned. I wanted to run after Diana, to demand answers, but my legs wouldn't move. Violet found me there, mascara running down my face. "What happened?" she asked, grabbing my shoulders. "Did she say something?" I couldn't form words, just shook my head and showed her the screenshot I'd managed to take of Diana's phone before she walked away. Violet's eyes went wide as she read the legal document. "Holy shit," she whispered. "Is this real?" "I don't know. Maybe. Trevor never mentioned anything like this. You need to talk to him, right now." But I couldn't. Not at our wedding reception, not while 200 guests were dancing and eating the $18,000 meal we'd charged to 3 different credit cards, not while Trevor's father was giving a toast about how proud he was of his son. I fixed my makeup in the bathroom mirror, reapplied my lipstick with trembling hands, and walked back into the reception like nothing was wrong. Trevor caught my eye from across the room and smiled, completely unaware that our marriage might have just cost him his entire inheritance. The rest of the reception passed in a blur. I smiled for photos, cut the cake, threw my bouquet. Diana watched me the whole time with that same smug expression, sipping champagne in her hideous chartreuse dress like she'd already won. At midnight, Trevor and I finally collapsed in the honeymoon suite at the hotel. He started unbuttoning his shirt, grinning at me with that boyish look I'd fallen in love with 3 years ago. "Best day of my life," he said, pulling me close. I wanted to tell him. The word sat heavy on my tongue, but he looked so happy, so completely content, that I couldn't bring myself to ruin it. "Mine too," I lied. We made love that night, but I was somewhere else entirely. My mind kept replaying Diana's words. "Tomorrow, we're calling the lawyers." I barely slept. At 6 a.m., while Trevor snored softly beside me, I grabbed his laptop from his bag and started researching trust fund clauses. What I found made my stomach turn. Matrimonial approval clauses were real, and they were enforceable. If Trevor's grandfather had included one in the trust document, and if Diana's signature was required for approval, we were in serious trouble. The trust fund wasn't just some small inheritance. Trevor had mentioned once that his grandfather had left him close to $4.7 million set to fully vest when he turned 30. He was 28 now. I thought about our life together, the small apartment we rented because Trevor said he wanted to build something on his own first, the modest car he drove, the way he never seemed worried about money, but never spent extravagantly either. He'd been waiting for that trust fund, planning on it, and I'd just jeopardized everything. At 8 a.m., Trevor's phone rang. He groaned, reaching for it without opening his eyes. Hello? His voice was thick with sleep. I watched his face change as he listened. Confusion, then disbelief, then something close to horror. What? No, Mom, that can't be right. He sat up straight, suddenly wide awake. What do you mean the lawyers are already reviewing it? My heart sank. It was happening, already. Trevor listened for another minute, his jaw clenching tighter with every word. I'll call you back, he finally said, and hung up. The silence stretched between us. What was that about? I asked, even though I already knew. He turned to look at me, his eyes searching my face. My mom says there's a clause in my grandfather's trust. Something about needing both parents' approval for major life decisions, including marriage. And she didn't approve. Apparently not. He ran his hands through his hair, the same gesture he made when he was stressed. She's saying I have to get the marriage annulled or I forfeit the entire trust fund. Trevor, did you know about this? The question hit me like a slap. What? No. How would I know about your family's trust fund? I don't know. But Melissa seemed to know everything else about what Mom was planning. Maybe she told you about this too. She didn't. I swear. Your mother told me last night, at the reception. His eyes narrowed. And you didn't think to mention it? We were at our wedding. I wasn't going to ruin our reception over something that might not even be true. Might not be true? He grabbed his laptop, pulling up his email. Mom sent me a copy of the trust document. Let me show you exactly how true it is. He clicked open an attachment, and there it was. Pages and pages of dense legal language, but one section was highlighted in yellow. The beneficiary must obtain written approval from both living parents for any marriage contracted before the age of 30. Failure to obtain such approval will result in immediate forfeiture of all trust assets, which will then be redistributed to surviving family members as outlined in Section 7. I read it 3 times, each word hammering another nail into my chest. I never knew this was in here, Trevor said quietly. Grandfather died when I was 19. My dad handled all the legal stuff. He never mentioned any conditions. Maybe he didn't know either. Or maybe he knew my mom would use it as a weapon someday. Trevor closed the laptop. She's done this before. With my sister. I'd heard about this. Melissa had dated a guy in college that Diana disapproved of. The relationship ended badly, though Melissa never talked about the details. She threatened Melissa's trust fund. Melissa doesn't have one. She gave in to Mom's demands about who she could date, what major to choose, where to live after graduation. In exchange, she gets a monthly allowance. But the real money? That's mine. Was mine. We can fight this, I said. Get a lawyer. Challenge the clause. With what money? That trust fund was going to let us buy a house, start a business, maybe have kids without worrying about finances. Now? He laughed bitterly. Now we're 2 people with $86,000 in student loans, working jobs that barely cover rent. I wanted to argue, but he was right. I was a junior graphic designer making $42,000 a year. He was in marketing, pulling in maybe $55,000. We'd been coasting on the assumption that the trust fund would arrive in 2 years and change everything. So what do we do? I asked. Trevor was quiet for a long moment. I don't know. 3 hours later, we met with a lawyer. Her name was Patricia Chen, and she charged $400 an hour for a Sunday consultation. We couldn't afford it, but we didn't have a choice. She reviewed the trust document with the kind of detached professionalism that made me want to scream. This clause is enforceable, she said finally. Your grandfather had the right to put any conditions he wanted on the trust. The question is whether the court will consider marriage approval to be reasonable. And? Trevor leaned forward. Probably yes. Courts generally respect the wishes of the deceased when it comes to estate planning. Unless you can prove the clause is discriminatory or against public policy, it stands. So I either get an annulment or I lose $4.7 million. That's the situation, yes. I felt like I was going to be sick. This was my fault. If I hadn't orchestrated the wine incident, if I just let Diana wear her white dress and dealt with it like an adult, maybe she wouldn't be weaponizing the trust fund now. What if we can get his mother to sign the approval? I asked. Patricia looked at me over her reading glasses. That would solve the problem. But based on what you've told me, that seems unlikely. There has to be something else, some loophole. There isn't. Her tone was final. I'm sorry, but this is pretty straightforward. The trust has conditions. Those conditions weren't met. The beneficiary loses access to the funds. We left her office in silence. Trevor didn't look at me during the elevator ride down, didn't speak during the drive home. When we got back to our apartment, he went straight to the bedroom and closed the door. I sat on the couch, staring at nothing. My phone buzzed. A text from Diana. I hope you enjoyed your wedding night. Trevor knows now, I assume. Such a shame. But actions have consequences, dear. You wanted to humiliate me? Consider yourself humiliated. I typed and deleted 5 different responses before settling on nothing. Anything I said would just make things worse. Another text came through, this time from Melissa. I heard what Mom did. I'm so sorry. I should have warned you about the trust fund clause. I didn't think she'd actually use it. You knew? I typed back. Mom threatened me with it when I was dating Cameron in college. Made me break up with him. I thought she was bluffing about doing it to Trevor. She wasn't bluffing. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Come over. Tomorrow. Don't tell Trevor. I might have something that can help. I wanted to ask what, but the dots disappeared and she didn't respond to my follow-up messages. That night, Trevor slept on the couch. I could hear him pacing around 2 a.m., probably researching lawyers or annulment procedures or ways to magically produce 4.7 million. The next morning, I called in sick to work and drove to Melissa's apartment across town. She answered the door looking exhausted, dark circles under her eyes. "You look how I feel," I said. "I didn't sleep. Come in." Her apartment was tiny, but expensively decorated. Everything from the furniture to the art on the walls screamed money, which made sense. Diana controlled her purse strings completely. "I need you to understand something before I show you this," Melissa said, kicking the door behind me. "If my mom finds out I gave this to you, she'll cut me off completely. No more allowance, no more car payments, no more health insurance. I'll be on my..." "Then don't show me. I can't ask you to risk that." "Yes, you can, because what she's doing is wrong." Melissa pulled out her laptop. After Cameron, I started digging into the family finances. I wanted to know exactly what leverage Mom had over me. She pulled up a folder filled with scanned documents. This is everything I could find about Trevor's trust fund. The original will, all the amendments, correspondence between my grandfather and his lawyers. And this, she clicked on one file, is the smoking gun. The document was a letter, dated 6 months before Trevor's grandfather died. It was addressed to Trevor's father. I read it out loud. "I'm concerned about Diana's influence over the children. She's become increasingly controlling, particularly regarding Melissa's personal life. I've added the marriage approval clause as a safeguard, but I want you to know it was never meant to be weaponized. If Diana tries to use it to control Trevor, I trust you'll override her objection. My intent was to protect the children from making rash decisions in their early 20s, not to give Diana permanent control over their lives." "Your grandfather wanted your dad to override Diana's objection?" "Exactly. The clause requires approval from both parents, but it doesn't specify that it has to be unanimous, just that both parents need to weigh in. So if your dad approves, the condition is met." Melissa smiled for the first time since I'd arrived. "My dad signed an approval form the day after your engagement was announced. He's always liked you. I saw it in his desk drawer." Hope fluttered in my chest. "Why didn't he tell Trevor?" "Because he didn't know Mom was going to object. Nobody did. She kept the white dress thing secret from him too. My dad he's not great at standing up to her. But I don't think he knows she's threatening to block the trust fund. We need to talk to him. That's the problem. He's in Singapore for work. Doesn't get back for another week. A week. 7 more days of Trevor looking at me like I destroyed our future. 7 more days of Diana's smug satisfaction. Can we call him?" I tried. "He's in back-to-back meetings with clients. Won't have time for a real conversation until Friday at the earliest." I slumped in my chair. "So we wait. Or," Melissa said slowly, "we go to the source. Your mom? She'll never sign. Not her. My uncle. My dad's brother." I vaguely remembered meeting him at the engagement party. Tall, serious-looking, not much for small talk. "What about him?" "He's the executor of my grandfather's estate. He's the one who actually controls distribution of the trust fund. If we can convince him that Mom is abusing the clause, that this isn't what grandfather intended, he might be able to override her. Can he do that? I'm not sure, but it's worth a shot." Uncle Richard lived in a massive house in the suburbs, the kind of place with a circular driveway and a fountain in front. When Melissa called to say we were coming, he agreed to see us immediately. He answered the door himself, no housekeeper or butler. Up close, I could see the family resemblance to Trevor. Same eyes, same jawline. "Come in," he said. Melissa explained some of what's happening. We sat in his study, surrounded by floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and leather furniture that probably cost more than my car. "Diana's blocking Trevor's trust fund because she disapproves of your marriage," Uncle Richard said. "Not a question, just a statement. Yes. And you want me to override her. We want you to enforce what your father actually intended," Melissa corrected. "This clause was never meant to give Mom absolute power." Uncle Richard sighed, pulling out reading glasses. "I've been expecting this call for years. I knew Diana would eventually use that clause as a weapon. I told my father it was a mistake to include it." "Can you help us?" I asked. "Legally? I'm not sure. The trust document gives both parents input, but it doesn't outline what happens if they disagree. I'd need to consult with the estate attorney." "And unofficially?" He leaned back in his chair, studying me. "Why did you marry Trevor?" The question caught me off guard. "Because I love him." Even knowing his family comes with significant baggage. Every family has baggage. True, but not every family has Diana. He smiled slightly. "I've known my sister-in-law for 30 years. She's brilliant, ambitious, and absolutely ruthless when she feels disrespected. You humiliated her at your wedding? She tried to wear a white dress." "I know. I saw the photos. That chartreuse monstrosity was inspired." He chuckled. "But Diana doesn't forgive. Ever. Even if I override her on the trust fund, she'll find other ways to make your life hell. I can handle Diana. Can you? Because this won't be the last battle. She'll criticize how you raise your children, where you live, how you spend money. She'll poison other family members against you. She'll show up uninvited and expect to be accommodated. And Trevor..." He paused. "Trevor has never been good at standing up to his mother." I thought about Trevor sleeping on the couch. Not quite blaming me, but not quite defending me either. "I know. And you still want this marriage?" "Yes." Uncle Richard was quiet for a moment, then nodded. "All right. I'll make some calls. But I need you to understand something. Even if I can legally override Diana's objection, the family dynamics won't change. You're going to spend the rest of your life fighting with her." "I know," I said again. What I didn't say was that I was already planning for that. Diana had shown me exactly who she was. Now I just needed to be smarter about how I dealt with her. That evening, I went home to find Trevor packing a bag. "Where are you going?" "My parents' house. My dad gets back from Singapore on Wednesday. I need to talk to him in person. Your mom will be there." "I know." He didn't look at me. "But I need to figure this out." Melissa and I talked to your uncle today. He thinks he might be able to help. Trevor paused, a shirt halfway into his duffel bag. What did you tell him? The truth. That your mom is abusing the trust fund clause. You had no right to involve more family members in this. I had every right. This affects both of us. Does it? He zipped the bag closed. Because from where I'm standing, this is all about you and my mom. I'm just collateral damage. That's not fair, isn't it? You knew she hated you. You knew she'd be at the wedding, but you couldn't just let the white dress thing go. You had to orchestrate this elaborate revenge plot. She was trying to upstage me at my own wedding. So what? So people would have whispered about her tackiness? Big deal. Instead, you humiliated her in front of 200 people, and now I'm losing $4.7 million. The words hung in the air between us. You blame me, I said quietly. I blame both of you. You and my mom, playing these stupid games while my life falls apart. He grabbed his bag and walked toward the door. Trevor, wait. I need some space. I'll call you in a few days. The door closed behind him with a soft click that felt louder than a slam. I stood there in our empty apartment, surrounded by wedding gifts we hadn't even unwrapped yet, and realized that Diana might have won after all. The next 3 days were the longest of my life. Trevor didn't call, didn't text. When I tried reaching him, his responses were 1 or 2 words. Fine, busy, later. I threw myself into work, spending 12-hour days at the design studio trying not to think about how my marriage was crumbling before it had even really started. On Wednesday afternoon, Melissa called. Uncle Richard got the estate lawyers involved. They're saying the trust document is ambiguous about disagreeing parents. It could go either way. That's not helpful. Wait, there's more. They found something in the original correspondence. Grandfather wrote a codicil 6 weeks before he died, specifically addressing this scenario. He wrote that if the parents disagree on approval, the executor should side with whichever parent is acting in the beneficiary's best interest, which would be your dad, not your mom. Exactly. But Uncle Richard needs your father-in-law to formally submit his approval in writing, with a statement explaining why the marriage is in Trevor's best interest. And he needs it before mom's lawyers file a formal objection. When does she file? Friday. So we have less than 48 hours. I tried calling Trevor again, straight to voicemail. Your dad needs to sign the trust approval form, I texted. Please call me. 3 hours later, he finally responded. Dad signed it this morning. He's sending it to Uncle Richard tonight. Mom is furious. Is it enough? I typed back. Lawyer says probably. We'll know by tomorrow. Can we talk? In person? The 3 dots appeared and disappeared several times before his response came through. Not yet. I need more time. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Diana's smug face, heard Trevor's voice saying, I blame both of you. At 2 a.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Is this Mrs. Anderson? A woman's voice, professional but cold. My new last name still felt strange. Yes. This is Patricia Lee, Diana Anderson's attorney. I'm calling to inform you that my client is pursuing legal action regarding the trust fund matter. We'll be filing for a declaratory judgment tomorrow morning, asking the court to invalidate your marriage's approval status. My heart hammered. Your client's husband already signed the approval. Under duress and undue influence, according to Mrs. Anderson, she's prepared to testify that you and your sister-in-law conspired to manipulate his decision. That's insane. He signed it because he wanted to. We'll let the court decide. You should expect to be served with papers within 24 hours. I'd suggest retaining counsel. She hung up before I could respond. I called Uncle Richard immediately, not caring that it was the middle of the night. Diana's filing a lawsuit, I said when he answered, groggy. She's claiming Trevor's dad was manipulated into signing the approval. Of course she is. I heard rustling like he was sitting up. I'll call the estate attorneys first thing in the morning. Try to get an emergency hearing before she can file. Will that work? I don't know. But we're going to try. I didn't go back to sleep. At 6 a.m., I was already dressed and drinking my 3rd cup of coffee when someone knocked on my door. Trevor stood there, looking as exhausted as I felt. I got the same call from my mom's lawyer, he said. Your mom called her lawyer at 2 a.m.? She's been planning this for days, maybe weeks. He came inside, dropping onto the couch. I'm sorry. For what? For blaming you. For not defending you to my mom. For being a coward. I sat next to him, not quite touching. You're not a coward. I am, though. I've spent my whole life avoiding conflict with my mother, letting her control things because it was easier than fighting. Even when she drove Melissa's boyfriend away, I told myself it was Melissa's choice to give in. You can't fix your sister's past. No, but I can fix this. Fix us. He finally looked at me. I love you, and I'm not letting my mother destroy our marriage over money, even if you lose the trust fund. Even then, we'll figure it out. We'll take out loans, work extra jobs, whatever it takes. I wanted to believe him, but I also knew how much that trust fund meant, not just for the money, but for what it represented. His grandfather's approval, his future security. Trevor, if we lose this court case, we're not going to lose. But if we do, then we lose. And we move on. He took my hand. I chose you, not the money. You. I felt tears starting to form. Your mom is going to make our lives hell. Probably. But we'll handle it together. At 9 a.m., we met with Uncle Richard and the estate attorneys at their downtown office. The conference room was all glass and steel, with a view of the city that probably cost extra. The lead attorney, a sharp-looking woman named Jennifer Brighton, didn't waste time with pleasantries. Diana's lawsuit is aggressive but ultimately baseless, she said, pulling up documents on the screen. She's claiming her husband was coerced into signing the approval, but she has no evidence. Meanwhile, we have the codicil clearly stating the executor should side with whichever parent is acting in the beneficiary's best interest. Can she win? Trevor asked. Anything can happen in court, but I'd put our chances at around 75%. The trust document is clear, the codicil is properly executed, and her allegations of manipulation are unsupported. What about the other 25%? I asked. Jennifer met my eyes. The judge could decide that any disagreement between parents invalidates the approval entirely. Some courts take a conservative approach to trust interpretation, so we could still lose everything. It's possible, but unlikely. We spent the next hour reviewing strategy, going over every detail of the trust document, preparing for depositions and court appearances. By the time we left, my head was spinning with legal terminology. This is going to cost a fortune in legal fees, Trevor said as we walked to the parking garage. Uncle Richard said the estate will cover it. Still, this whole thing, he shook his head. My family is insane. Most families are. Yours just has better lawyers. He laughed, the first real laugh I'd heard from him in days. True. That evening, we were served with papers. Diana's lawsuit was 47 pages long, filled with accusations and legal arguments that essentially boiled down to, I don't like my daughter-in-law, so she shouldn't get any money. I read through it once, then put it aside. Dwelling on it wouldn't help. Want to order pizza and pretend we're normal people? I asked Trevor. God, yes. We spent that night on the couch, eating pepperoni pizza and watching terrible reality TV, not talking about trust funds or lawsuits or his mother, just being together. Around midnight, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You think you've won, but you don't know the half of what I'm capable of. This is just the beginning. I showed it to Trevor. His jaw clenched. That's my mom's number. She got a new phone. Should we tell the lawyers? Add it to the pile of evidence that she's completely unhinged. He took my phone and blocked the number. She's not going to stop until she's destroyed us, or we've destroyed her. Then I guess we better make sure we win. The next few weeks were a blur of legal proceedings. Depositions where Diana's lawyer asked me increasingly invasive questions about my intentions toward Trevor, my family background, my financial situation. Through it all, Diana sat across from me with that same smug expression, like she knew something I didn't. Trevor's father was deposed too. He testified that he'd signed the approval willingly, that he believed I was good for his son, that his wife's objections were based on personal animosity rather than legitimate concerns about Trevor's welfare. Diana's lawyer tried to argue that Trevor's father was being controlled by me, that I'd somehow manipulated him during our few interactions. The argument was so thin it was almost insulting, but the trial date kept getting pushed back. First 1 month, then 2. Diana's lawyers filed motion after motion, prolonging everything. She's trying to drain the estate's legal budget, Jennifer explained during one of our strategy meetings. Force a settlement. Will it work? I asked. Not if Uncle Richard holds firm. And so far, he's not budging. Meanwhile, life went on. Trevor and I settled into a routine, figuring out how to be married while in the middle of a legal war. Some days were good. We'd cook dinner together, talk about normal things like where to hang pictures or what color to paint the bathroom. Other days, the stress got to us and we'd fight about stupid things, dishes left in the sink or forgetting to pick up groceries. One evening, 3 months after the wedding, I came home to find Trevor sitting at the kitchen table with his head in his hands. What happened? I ran into my mom at the grocery store. I sat down across from him. What did she say? She asked when I was going to come to my senses and get the annulment. Said it wasn't too late, that the trust fund was still mine if I just admitted I'd made a mistake. His voice cracked. She was crying, actually crying, saying I was breaking her heart. Trevor. I told her no, that I'd chosen you and I wasn't going back, and he looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. She said I was dead to her, that if I continued with this marriage, she'd never speak to me again. I'm sorry. Don't be. She gave me an ultimatum. I chose you. He stood up, pulling me into a hug. But it still hurts, you know? She's my mom. Even if she's terrible, she's still my mom. I held him while he cried. This man who'd been strong through 3 months of legal hell finally breaking down because his mother had rejected him. That night, as we lay in bed, he said quietly, if we lose the lawsuit, I don't want you to feel guilty. I already feel guilty. Well, don't. This isn't your fault, it's my mom's. She's the one who couldn't accept that I'm an adult who can make my own decisions. Still, I could have handled the wedding dress thing differently. You could have, but you didn't, and honestly, I'm glad you stood up to her. Someone needed to. 2 weeks later, we finally got our trial date. 6 months after the wedding, we'd have our day in court. Jennifer prepared us extensively. Mock questioning, reviewing testimony, going over every possible angle Diana's lawyers might take. The key, she explained, is showing that your marriage was entered into in good faith, for legitimate reasons. Not as some scheme to access Trevor's money. They're going to paint you as a gold digger. We need to counter that narrative. How? Character witnesses. People who can testify about your relationship, your values, your character, friends, co-workers, family members. We spent the next month lining up witnesses. My best friend from college who'd seen Trevor and me fall in love. My boss who could testify about my work ethic and independence. Trevor's friends who'd known him for years and could speak to how happy he was in our relationship. Even Violet agreed to testify, despite her nervousness about being in court. You stood by me through the wedding planning disaster, she said. I'm standing by you now. The night before the trial, I couldn't eat. My stomach was in knots, my mind racing through every possible outcome. What if we lose? I asked Trevor for the 100th time. Then we lose, and we build a life anyway. But nothing. I meant what I said. I chose you over the money. I'd choose you 100 times over. I wanted to believe it would be that simple. But I'd seen how the stress had worn on both of us. The fights over money, the anxiety about our future, the weight of knowing that one court decision could change everything. The trial started on a Tuesday morning in late July. The courthouse was grand and imposing, all marble and high ceilings that made me feel small. Diana was already there when we arrived, flanked by her legal team. She wore an expensive navy suit and pearls, looking every inch the respectable matron. When she saw us, her expression didn't change, just that same cold, calculating look. The courtroom filled up quickly. Uncle Richard sat on our side, along with Trevor's father, who'd flown back from another business trip specifically for this. Melissa was there too, despite knowing it might mean losing her allowance. The judge, a stern-looking woman in her 60s named Judge Patricia Morrison, called the court to order. Diana's lawyer went first, painting a picture of me as a calculating social climber who'd seduced Trevor specifically for his trust fund. He presented the wedding dress incident as evidence of my vindictive nature, showing photos of Diana in the chartreuse nightmare as proof of my cruelty. Mrs. Anderson subjected my client to deliberate humiliation, he argued. This is not the behavior of a woman who married for love. This is the behavior of someone settling a score. Our lawyer countered with the context. The white dress Diana had planned to wear, the years of mistreatment, the history of Diana trying to control every aspect of Trevor's life. Then came the witnesses. My college roommate testified about late-night conversations where I'd gushed about Trevor, long before I knew anything about a trust fund. Trevor's best friend from high school talked about how Trevor had changed since meeting me, become more confident and independent. Trevor's father took the stand and calmly explained why he'd signed the approval. "I've known my son his entire life," he said. "I've never seen him happier than he is with this young woman. My wife's objections are based on personal grievances, not on any legitimate concern for Trevor's well-being." Then Diana took the stand. She was a masterful witness, playing the wounded mother perfectly. Tears welled in her eyes as she described how I'd poisoned Trevor against her, how the wine incident had been a calculated attack meant to destroy her relationship with her son. "I only want what's best for Trevor," she said, dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief. "And marrying someone so vengeful, so cruel, it's not in his best interest." Our lawyer cross-examined her, bringing up her history of controlling behavior, the way she'd driven away Melissa's boyfriend, the documented instances of her interfering in Trevor's previous relationships. "Isn't it true, Mrs. Anderson, that you've objected to every serious relationship your son has had?" "I've had concerns. Yes or no, please. Have you objected to every woman Trevor has seriously dated?" Diana's composure cracked slightly. "I've expressed my opinions, yes. And would it be fair to say that no woman has ever been good enough for your son, in your eyes? I have high standards for who joins our family, standards that apparently no one can meet." Our lawyer pulled out a document. "According to this email you sent to Trevor's previous girlfriend, Amy, you stated that she was from the wrong background and lacked the sophistication your family requires. Is that correct? That relationship ended for other reasons. But you did send that email?" "Yes. And this one to Rebecca, stating that she was too career-focused and wouldn't make an appropriate mother? I may have expressed concerns. And this one to Claire, calling her common and unsuitable?" Diana's face flushed. "I was protecting my son. Or controlling him?" "Objection." Diana's lawyer shot up. "Sustained," the judge said. "Counselor, rephrase." The cross-examination continued for another hour, methodically dismantling Diana's image as a concerned mother and revealing her as what she really was: controlling, manipulative, and unable to let her son make his own choices. By the time she stepped down, she was visibly shaken, the composed mask slipping. Then Trevor took the stand. He was calm, measured, explaining in clear terms why he'd married me, how our relationship had developed, what the trust fund meant to him. "I won't lie and say the money doesn't matter," he said. "But it matters less than my wife. My mother has always tried to control who I date, who I'm friends with, what career I pursue. The trust fund was just her latest leverage point. But I'm 28 years old. I'm allowed to make my own decisions even if she doesn't agree with them." Diana's lawyer tried to shake him on cross-examination, suggesting that I'd manipulated him, that he was too influenced by me to see clearly. "Has your wife ever pressured you about the trust fund?" the lawyer asked. "Never. Never asked when you'd receive it, how much it was, what you'd do with it? She knew it existed, but we didn't discuss details. I kept that information private. Why? Because I wanted to build something on my own first, before the trust fund vested. I didn't want money to define our relationship. And yet, here we are, fighting over money." "No," Trevor said firmly. "Here we are, fighting over my right to marry who I choose. The money is just my mother's weapon of choice." The trial lasted 3 days. By the end, I was exhausted, emotionally drained from reliving every moment of our relationship under the harsh light of legal scrutiny. Judge Morrison said she'd take the matter under advisement and issue a ruling within 30 days. We left the courthouse in silence, too wrung out to even discuss how it had gone. That night, Trevor and I ordered Chinese food and sat on the couch, picking at lo mein neither of us wanted to eat. "Do you think we won?" I asked. "I have no idea." Judge Morrison's face didn't give anything away. "What if she rules against us? Then we figure it out, together." I wanted to ask how, wanted to plan and strategize and control something in this situation that felt entirely out of our hands. But I was too tired. We fell asleep on the couch, still in our court clothes, the TV playing some late-night show neither of us watched. The next morning, I woke up to find a text from Melissa. "Mom moved out last night, just packed bags and left. Dad's freaking out." I showed Trevor. He stared at the message for a long moment. "She's trying to punish him," he said finally, "for testifying against her. Will she come back? Who knows? My parents' marriage has always been," he trailed off, "complicated." 2 weeks later, we got word that Trevor's father had filed for divorce. The news sent shockwaves through the family. Diana and her husband had been married for 32 years. Whatever their problems, no one expected this. "He said he's tired," Melissa told us over coffee. Tired of her manipulating everything? Tired of her controlling the kids? Tired of pretending their marriage is functional? How's your mom handling it? About as well as you'd expect. She's telling everyone Dad's having a midlife crisis, that you've destroyed our family, that this is all your fault. Of course it is, I said bitterly. Don't let her get to you. She's just deflecting. The truth is, their marriage has been dead for years. Dad's been sleeping in the guest room since I was in high school. This was coming regardless of your wedding. But knowing that didn't make it easier. I still felt like the catalyst for a family implosion. 3 weeks after the trial, I was at work when Jennifer called. The judge issued her ruling, she said. My heart stopped. And we won. Judge Morrison ruled that the trust documents provisions were met when Trevor's father signed the approval. She found Diana's claims of manipulation to be without merit and noted that her pattern of controlling behavior suggested she was not acting in Trevor's best interest. I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. The trust fund is Trevor's, Jennifer continued. Diana has 30 days to appeal, but Jennifer doesn't think she will. Her case was weak from the start. We won? You won. I called Trevor immediately. He was in a meeting, but when I said it was urgent, his boss let him step out. We won, I said as soon as he answered. The judge ruled in our favor. Silence on the other end. Then, are you sure? Jennifer just called. It's over. The money is yours. More silence. Then I heard him crying, these deep, shuddering sobs that came from somewhere beyond relief. Trevor? I'm okay. I'm good. I didn't realize how scared I was that we'd lose. Me too. That evening, we celebrated with Melissa and Uncle Richard at an expensive restaurant that we could actually afford now. Champagne flowed, toasts were made, and for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. What are you going to do with the money? Uncle Richard asked. Trevor and I looked at each other. We'd talked about this late at night when we couldn't sleep, planning for a future that felt uncertain. Pay off our student loans first, Trevor said. Then buy a house. Something modest. Save the rest. No fancy cars or expensive vacations? Melissa teased. Maybe later. Right now, we just want stability. Uncle Richard raised his glass. To stability. And to standing up to bullies. Even when they're family. We drank to that. The next day, Diana's lawyer filed a notice of appeal. I shouldn't have been surprised, but I was. Part of me had hoped that losing in court would be enough, that Diana would finally accept defeat. The appeal will take months, Jennifer explained. Maybe longer, and it's expensive. She'll have to post a bond and pay legal fees throughout the process. Can she win on appeal? Anything's possible, but appeals courts typically defer to trial court findings unless there was a clear error of law. Judge Morrison's ruling was thorough and well supported. I'd put the chances of a reversal at less than 10%. 10%. Still a chance. Still a possibility that this nightmare would continue. But I was tired of living in fear of Diana. Tired of letting her control our lives. Let her appeal, I told Trevor. We're not putting our lives on hold anymore. We started house hunting the next week. Found a small 3-bedroom in a decent neighborhood. Nothing fancy but ours. We put down 20% and finally moved out of our cramped apartment. The house needed work. The kitchen was straight out of the 1970s, the bathrooms needed updating, and the carpet was a crime against aesthetics. But it had good bones and a yard and a bedroom that would someday be a nursery. We spent weekends painting walls and ripping out old fixtures, slowly making the space our own. It was satisfying, tangible work that felt like building something after months of everything falling apart. 3 months later, Diana's appeal was denied. The appellate court found no error in Judge Morrison's ruling and awarded us legal fees. She's done, Jennifer said when she called with the news. Unless she wants to appeal to the state Supreme Court, which would be frivolous and expensive. Is it really over? Legally? Yes. The trust fund is Trevor's, and there's nothing she can do about it now. That night, Trevor and I sat in our newly renovated kitchen, drinking wine and processing the finality of it. Do you think she'll ever speak to me again? He asked. I don't know. Do you want her to? He thought about it for a long time. Part of me does. She's my mom, but another part of me is relieved that I don't have to deal with her anymore. Is that terrible? It's human. She chose this. She could have just accepted our marriage and moved on. Instead, she burned every bridge. 6 months later, we got an invitation to Melissa's engagement party. She'd met someone, a genuinely nice guy named Chris who worked in nonprofit management and made her laugh. Is your mom going to be there? I asked when Melissa called to invite us. No, she's still not speaking to most of the family. Dad will be there, though, with his new girlfriend. The party was at Uncle Richard's house, casual and warm. Trevor's father introduced us to Eleanor, a woman his age who taught literature at the local college. She was nothing like Diana, warm where Diana was cold, encouraging where Diana was critical. I've heard so much about you two, she said, shaking our hands. The infamous wedding dress incident, brilliant. I liked her immediately. As the evening wore on, I found myself on the back patio with Trevor's father. We'd never talked much, just polite small talk at family events. I owe you an apology, he said, surprising me. For what? For not standing up to Diana sooner, for letting her behavior go unchecked for so many years. I told myself I was keeping the peace, but really I was just being a coward. You testified for us in court. You signed the approval. That counts for something. It's the bare minimum of what a father should do. Support his son's choices. He took a sip of his drink. The divorce was the best decision I've made in 20 years. I only wish I'd done it sooner. How's Diana handling it? About as well as you'd expect. She's telling anyone who'll listen that I abandoned her, that you're a home wrecker, that the whole family has turned against her. But mostly she's alone, which is what happens when you spend your whole life pushing people away. I felt a small twinge of pity for Diana despite everything. To lose your husband, your son, and most of your family because you couldn't control your need to control everything. But the pity was small and quickly passed. A year after the wedding, Trevor and I were finally in a good place. The legal battles were over. The trust fund was secure. Our house was slowly becoming a home. We'd started talking about kids, tentatively planning for a future that felt stable. Then, one Tuesday morning, I came out of the bathroom holding a positive pregnancy test. Trevor's face went through about 5 different emotions in 3 seconds. Shock, joy, terror, excitement, pure panic. "We're having a baby?" His voice cracked. "We're having a baby." He picked me up and spun me around, laughing and crying at the same time. The pregnancy was smooth, blessedly free of complications. We turned the 3rd bedroom into a nursery, painting it a soft yellow because we decided to keep the gender a surprise. 8 months in, I was huge and uncomfortable, and ready to meet this baby who kept kicking my ribs. That's when I got a text from an unknown number. I heard about the pregnancy. "Congratulations. I'd like to meet for coffee to discuss the future." It was Diana. I recognized the tone, if not the number. I showed Trevor. He stared at it for a long moment. "What do you want to do?" he asked. "I don't know. Part of me wants to ignore it, but she's the baby's grandmother." "Yeah." We talked about it for days, weighing the pros and cons. Finally, I agreed to meet her, but only in a public place and only for an hour. The coffee shop was neutral territory, a busy Starbucks where nothing too dramatic could happen. Diana was already there when I arrived, looking smaller somehow, older. "Thank you for coming," she said as I sat down. "I almost didn't. I wouldn't have blamed you if you hadn't." She wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. "I've spent the last year in therapy, court-mandated initially because of the divorce, but I've continued going. Good for you. My therapist helped me see some things about myself, about my need to control everyone around me, about how I've destroyed every meaningful relationship in my life because I couldn't let go." I waited, not sure where this was going. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," she continued. "I don't deserve it, but I'm asking for a chance to be part of my grandchild's life, to do better than I did with my own children." "Diana, I know I don't deserve it. I know what I put you through. The wedding dress thing was petty. The lawsuit was cruel. I've been a terrible mother and an even worse mother-in-law." She looked up at me, and for the first time I saw something genuine in her eyes. Something beyond the manipulation and the control. "But I don't want to miss out on my grandchild's life because I was too proud to admit I was wrong." I studied her face, looking for signs of deceit, some indication that this was another manipulation, but she just looked tired and sad. "I need to talk to Trevor about this." "Of course, I understand." She pulled out a card. "This is my therapist's information. She's willing to do some family sessions if you'd be open to it. Neutral ground, professional mediation." I took the card. "I'll think about it. That's all I'm asking." I left the coffee shop feeling confused. Part of me wanted to believe Diana had really changed. Another part remembered every cruel thing she'd done, every manipulation, every attempt to destroy my marriage. That night, I told Trevor about the meeting. "What do you think?" he asked. "I think people can change. I also think your mom has spent 60 years being exactly who she is. Can someone really change that much? I don't know, but maybe it's worth finding out? For the baby's sake?" We started family therapy 3 weeks later. Diana, Trevor, and me, sitting in a small office while Dr. Chen mediated. It was awkward and painful and uncomfortable. Diana had to confront her behavior head-on, hear how her actions had affected Trevor, listen to me describe the trauma of the lawsuit. There were sessions where she cried, sessions where Trevor yelled, sessions where I wanted to walk out and never come back. But slowly, incrementally, things started to shift. Diana began taking accountability. Real accountability, not the non-apology apologies she'd used before. She acknowledged the harm she'd caused. She worked on her control issues. She started respecting boundaries. It wasn't perfect. She still made comments sometimes that crossed the line, still tried to assert control in subtle ways. But when called out, she'd catch herself, apologize, and try to do better. Our daughter was born on a rainy Tuesday in March. 8 pounds, 3 ounces, with Trevor's eyes and my stubborn chin. We named her Sophia Grace. Diana met her 3 days later in the hospital. She brought flowers, not the expensive arrangement she would have chosen a year ago, but a simple bouquet from the grocery store. "She's beautiful," Diana said, tears streaming down her face. "Absolutely perfect. Do you want to hold her?" I asked. Diana looked at me like I'd offered her the world. "Really? Really?" I watched as Diana cradled her granddaughter, saw something soften in her face that I'd never seen before. Maybe people could change. Maybe it just took the right motivation. Over the next year, Diana proved herself slowly. She respected our parenting decisions, even when she disagreed. She asked before visiting instead of showing up uninvited. She apologized when she overstepped. It wasn't perfect. We had setbacks, arguments, moments where old patterns resurfaced. But she kept working at it, kept trying to be better. 2 years after the wedding, Trevor and I hosted Thanksgiving at our house. Melissa and Chris came, now married themselves. Trevor's dad and Eleanor, Uncle Richard and his wife, and Diana, who brought a pumpkin pie and complimented my cooking without a single backhanded comment. As I looked around the table at this family that had almost destroyed itself over pride and control and money, I felt something close to peace. We'd survived. Not just survived, but actually built something good from the wreckage. After dinner, Diana asked to speak with me privately. We went out to the back porch where the November air was crisp and clear. "I wanted to thank you," she said. "For what?" "For not giving up. On Trevor, on the marriage, on the possibility that I could be better. A lot of people would have written me off completely. I almost did. I know. I don't blame you." She looked out at the yard, where Trevor was playing with Sophia in the fallen leaves. When I wore that white dress to your wedding, I thought I was making a point, showing you that you'd never really be part of this family, that I'd always have the power. You succeeded in making a point, just not the one you intended." She laughed, sharp and bitter. "The wine incident was brilliant, by the way. I was furious in the moment. But looking back, I deserved worse, probably. I spent so much of my life trying to control everything. My husband, my children, even you. And I almost lost it all because I couldn't accept that control is an illusion. You didn't almost lose it all. You did lose it all. You lost your marriage, your relationship with Trevor, your dignity in court. You had to build it all back. You're right, and I'm still building. Every day I'm trying to be better than I was. It's exhausting, honestly. Growth usually is." We stood in silence for a moment, watching Trevor and Sophia. "I won't ever be perfect," Diana said finally. "I'll probably screw up again, say the wrong thing, or try to control something I shouldn't. But I want you to know that I'm trying, really trying. I know. And as long as you keep trying, we'll keep working with you." She nodded, blinking back tears. "Thank you." Inside, someone called us for dessert. We went back in, back to the warmth and noise of family. That night, after everyone had gone home and Sophia was asleep, Trevor and I sat in our living room, exhausted but content. "Did you ever think we'd get here?" he asked. "With my mom actually being decent? Honestly, no. I thought we'd be estranged from her forever. Would that have been easier? I thought about it. Maybe. But this is better. Not easy, but better. I'm proud of you, you know, for giving her a second chance when you didn't have to. I'm proud of you, too, for standing up to her in the first place, for choosing us over the money. The money helped, though." He grinned. "It definitely helped." We laughed, and I thought about that girl who'd planned the perfect revenge on her future mother-in-law, not knowing it would lead to a lawsuit and a family implosion, and eventually, to this, to something resembling peace. The trust fund money sat in our bank account, most of it invested for Sophia's future. We'd bought the house, paid off our debts, donated to causes we cared about. But the real wealth wasn't the $4.7 million. It was this: the family we'd fought to build, the boundaries we'd established, the relationships we'd salvaged from the wreckage. Diana would never be a perfect grandmother or a perfect person. She'd probably overstep again, try to control things, make comments that would require another therapy session to work through. But she was trying, and that was enough. 3 years after the wedding, I got a text from Diana with a photo attached. It was the white dress she'd planned to wear, hanging in a donation center. "Getting rid of some old baggage," the message said. Literally and figuratively. I smiled and showed Trevor. "Character development," he said. "Redemption arc. Do you forgive her? For everything?" I thought about it. Forgiveness was complicated. It wasn't a single moment or decision, but an ongoing choice. I'm working on it. Same way she's working on being better. Fair enough. That evening we had dinner with just the three of us. Me, Trevor, and Sophia, who was now old enough to smear spaghetti sauce all over her face and demand more garlic bread. As I watched my husband make silly faces at our daughter, as I sat in the house we'd bought with money we'd fought for, as I contemplated calling Diana to say thank you for the text, I realized something. The wedding dress revenge had been satisfying in the moment. But this messy, complicated, hard-won family peace was so much better than any revenge could ever be. Sometimes the best payback isn't destruction. It's building something good despite someone's best efforts to tear you down. And we'd built something good. Not perfect. Never perfect. But ours. And that was enough.